until we found the eye. That was the extraordinary thing. We actually did find the creature. We only caught a glimpse of it for a few seconds, slowly edging its way along a branch a couple of feet above our heads, and looking down at us through the rain with a sort of serene incomprehension as to what kind of things we might possibly be. But it was the kind of moment about which it is hard not to feel completely dizzy. Why? Because, I realized later, I was a monkey looking at a lemur. By flying from New York and Paris to Tenerife by 747 jet, up to Diego Suarez in an old prop plane, driving to the port of Maro, etc. in an even older truck, crossing to Nosy Mangabe in a boat that was so old and dilapidated that it was almost indistinguishable from driftwood, and finally walking by night into the ancient rainforest. We were almost making a time journey back through the stages of our experiments in twig technology to the environment from which we had originally ousted the lemurs. And here was one of the very last of them, looking at me with, as I say, serene incomprehension. The following day, Mark and I sat on the steps of the hut in the morning sunshine, making notes and discussing ideas for the article I would write for the Observer about the expedition. He had explained to me in detail the history of the lemurs, and I said that I thought there was an irony to it. Madagascar had been a monkey-free refuge for the lemurs off the coast of mainland Africa, and now Nosy Mangabe had to be a monkey-free refuge off the coast of mainland Madagascar. The refuges were getting smaller and smaller, and the monkeys were already here on this one, sitting, making notes about it. Well, the difference, said Mark, is that the first monkey-free refuge was set up by chance. The second was actually set up by the monkeys. So I suppose it's fair to say, I said, that as our intelligence has increased, it has given us not only greater power, but also an understanding of the consequences of using that power. It's given us the ability to control our environment, but also the ability to control ourselves. Well, up to a point, said Mark, up to a point. There are 21 species of lemur on Madagascar now, of which the eye is thought to be the rarest, which just means that it's the one that's currently closest to the edge. At one time there were over 40. Nearly half of them have been pushed over the edge already, and that's just the lemurs. Virtually everything that lives in the Madagascan rainforest doesn't live anywhere else at all, and there's only about 10% of that left. And that's just Madagascar. Have you ever been to mainland Africa? No. One species after another is on the way out, and they're really major animals. There are less than 20 northern white rhino left, and there's a desperate battle going on to save them from the poachers. They're in Zaire, and the mountain gorillas too. They're one of man's closest living relatives, but we've almost killed them off this century. But it's happening throughout the rest of the world as well. Do you know about the kakapo? The what? The kakapo. It's the world's largest, fattest, and least able to fly parrot. It lives in New Zealand. It's the strangest bird I know of, and will probably be as famous as the dodo if it goes extinct. How many of them are there? 40 and falling. Do you know about the Yangtze River dolphin? No. The Komodo dragon, the Rodrigues fruit bat? Wait a minute, I said. I went into the hut and rummaged around in the ants for one of the monkey's most prized achievements. It consisted of a lot of twigs mashed up to a pulp and flattened out into sheets and then held together with something that had previously held a cow together. I took my Filofax outside and flipped through it while the sun streamed through the trees behind me, from which some ruffed lemurs were calling to each other. Well, I said, sitting down on the step again, I've just got a couple of novels to write, but what are you doing in 1988? Here be chickens. The first animal we went to look for, 3 years later, was the Komodo dragon lizard. This was an animal, like most of the animals we were going to see, about which I knew very little. What little I did know was hard to like. They are man-eaters. This is not so bad in itself. Lions and tigers are man-eaters, and though we may be intensely wary of them and treat them with respectful fear, we nevertheless have an instinctive admiration for them. We don't actually like to be eaten by them, but we don't resent the very idea. The reason, probably, is that we are mammals and so are they. There's a kind of unreconstructed species prejudice at work. A lion is one of us, but a lizard is not, and neither, for that matter, is a fish, which is why we have such an unholy terror of sharks. The Komodo lizards are also big. Very big. There's one on Komodo at the moment which is over 12 feet long and stands about a yard high, which you can't help but feel is entirely the wrong size for a lizard to be. particularly if it's a man-eater and you are about to go and share an island with it. Though they are man-eaters, they don't get to eat man very often, and more generally their diet consists of goats, pigs and deer and such like, but they will only kill these animals if they can't find something that's dead already, because they are, at heart, scavengers. They like their meat bad and smelly. We don't like our meat like that and tend to be leery of things that do. I was definitely leery of these lizards. Mark had spent most of the intervening 3 years planning and researching the expeditions we were to make, writing letters, telephoning, but most often telexing, to naturalists working in the field in remote parts of the world, organising schedules, letters of introduction, and maps. He also arranged all the visas, flights and boats and accommodation, and then had to arrange them all over again when it turned out that I hadn't quite finished the novels yet. At last, they were done. I left my house in the hands of the builders, who claimed they only had 3 more weeks' work to do, and set off to fulfil my one last commitment, an author tour of Australia. I'm always very sympathetic when I hear people complaining that all they ever get on television or radio chat shows is authors honking on about their latest book. It does, on the other hand, get us out of the house and spare our families the trial of hearing us honking on about our latest book. Finally, that too was over, and we could start looking for giant lizards. We met up in a hotel room in Melbourne and examined our array of expeditionary equipment. We were Mark, myself, and Gaynor Shute, a radio producer who was going to be recording our exploits for the BBC. Our equipment was a vast array of cameras, tape recorders, tents, sleeping bags, medical supplies, mosquito coils, unidentifiable things made of canvas and nylon with metal eyelets and plastic hooks, cagoules, boots, penknives, torches, and a cricket bat. None of us would admit to having brought the cricket bat. We couldn't understand what it was doing there. We phoned room service to bring us up some beers and also to take the cricket bat away, but they didn't want it. The guy from room service said that if we were really going to look for man-eating lizards, maybe the cricket bat would be a handy thing to have. If you find you've got a dragon charging towards you at 30 miles an hour snapping its teeth, you can always drive it defensively through the covers, he said, deposited the beers and left. We hid the cricket bat under the bed, opened the beers, and let Mark explain something of what we were in for. For centuries, he said, the Chinese told stories of great scaly, man-eating monsters with fiery breath, but they were thought to be nothing more than myths and fanciful imaginings. Old sailors would tell of them and would write, "Here be dragons," on their maps when they saw a land they didn't at all like the look of. And then, at the beginning of the century, a pioneering Dutch aviator was attempting to island hop his way along the Indonesian archipelago to Australia when he had engine trouble and had to crash land his plane on the tiny island of Komodo. He survived the crash, but his plane didn't. He went to search for water. As he was searching, he found a strange wide track on the sandy shore, followed the track, and suddenly found himself confronted with something that he, also, didn't at all like the look of. It appeared to be a great, scaly, man-eating monster, fully 10 feet long. What he was looking at was the thing we are going to look for, the Komodo dragon lizard. Did he survive? I asked, going straight for the point. Yes, he did, though his reputation didn't. He stayed alive for 3 months and then was rescued, but when he went home everyone thought he was mad and nobody believed a word of it. So, were the Komodo dragons, I asked, the origin of the Chinese dragon myths? Well, nobody really knows, of course. At least I don't. But it certainly seems like a possibility. It's a large creature with scales, it's a man-eater, and though it doesn't actually breathe fire, it does have the worst breath of any creature known to man. But there's something else you should know about the island as well.